UFC Vegas 83. These are the full card predictions and the betting breakdown. Main event is Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. Looking forward to talking about each of the matchups on this card. So make sure you guys smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Turn the post notifications on and make sure to share the video as well. And also note, I will be live for the entire UFC Vegas 83 fight card Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Do not miss the fight companion. And let's get into the fights. Starting the card off, we have Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. This fight was initially supposed to take place last week. Garcia got sick and the fight didn't happen. I honestly don't anticipate this actually to be the card opener bout. I would actually see it more as a main card fight or like a featured prelim. Nonetheless, I'm picking Melquizael Costa to win. If you guys have been watching the channel, you know I've been on Costa with a bit of confidence since the fight, first popped onto the scene. And I feel like the extra week is a weird scenario because both of these guys now need to keep their weight more so down to come in on point at 145 pounds. I wonder if that's going to inhibit any performance on either side. Nonetheless, how I viewed this matchup is Costa is the superior technical striker, where Steve Garcia, nonetheless, is very heavy-handed. He has a lot of punching power, and he's got a tricky striking style, but he's hittable down the center line, and Costa is clearly the slicker guy with a more wide array of tools. I feel like the weapons favoring Costa: kicks. I think he's faster. I think he's good with straight shots. Garcia hits with a lot of power, definitely, but I see Costa as a guy with a very good skill set. And you also really can't doubt Melquizael Costa in the grappling. He's solid there as well. I'm going to ride with Costa to get it done, sticking with my initial pick for the fight. Now, we actually don't have the lines on fight odds, but I know what the lines are here. Melquizael Costa is in that minus 200 range as a favorite heading into the fight. Same as it was last week. Expect Steve Garcia to be a fair size underdog. He's got a puncher's chance. As I said last week, he's got a puncher's chance. But realistically, Melquizael Costa is the better fighter, and I think that leads him to a knockout win. Second or third round, expect a patient Melquizael Costa to find the kill shot. We're going with Costa for the W, starting the card off. Next fight on the card, we have Daniel Marcos versus Carlos Vera. This is a short notice addition to the card. I'm actually really happy they made it. I'm picking Daniel Marcos to win. Carlos Vera fought on the most recent Ultimate Fighter, and he lost by a decision to Brad Katona. Even though he got outworked, specifically outgrappled in that fight, he had moments where he did get on top, and he's a tough customer for sure. He's got really good taekwondo. His kicks are off the charts. Daniel Marcos specializes in kickboxing. He's a slick striker from the outside. He's extremely accurate. He was supposed to fight in Sao Paulo against Victor Hugo. Hugo didn't make the weight. Fight got canceled. Marcos is having bad luck getting these fights to actually come to fruition. Carlos Vera stepping in to fight him. Granted, both guys really stepping in on short notice to fight one another. I feel as though Daniel Marcos has the superior striking. Even though Vera has really nice kicks, and even I could say flashy kicks, the taekwondo style is good from range with strikes, but I don't think he's going to have the precision down the line like Daniel Marcos. I think Marcos has better leg kicks than Carlos Vera. Realistically, the side of Vera, he's got good high kicks. He's got good spinning kicks. He got good spinning kicks to the body too, and side kicks. I just think it's going to be very hard to land those type of strikes on somebody as skilled and technical as Daniel Marcos in the stand-up. This right here, it's a bit of a step down in competition, in all honesty, for Marcos. He just fought Davy Grant and won a split decision there. Before that debut, he knocked out Simon Oliveira. Carlos Vera gets a big opportunity coming in here on short notice to fight a really good striker in Marcos, and I think he's going to be glad to have a striker versus striker fight. He's also 36, Vera, making his debut in the UFC after his Ultimate Fighter run. I think Marcos is going to get a decision on him. I feel like Vera's pretty tough, and Marcos will be patient and technical. Though Vera's hands are somewhat low, I could see Marcos hitting him with a big punch on the inside and stunning him. I'm going to lean the side of decision for Marcos, though. Now, the odds actually have not dropped for this fight officially, but I'm going to predict that Daniel Marcos is somewhere around minus 250 to minus 300 as the favorite in this fight. I think it's going to be a very wide line. I could definitely see it swelling into the minus 450 range. If you're considering betting Daniel Marcos, I'll tell you, keep your eye on whatever book you're using, and like immediately as the odds drop, you're going to want to jump on them because the line is just going to get wider. Carlos Vera, my opinion, significantly outmatched, but he's a tough customer, and I do think has likely potential, right, to go 3 rounds. But Marcos might knock him out too. I'm curious what the props are going to look like, but I'm picking Daniel Marcos for the win on this late addition to the card, which honestly adds a lot of excitement because Daniel Marcos and Carlos Vera, I think it's going to be a fun fight, and Marcos a good prospect. Next fight on the card, ladies going after it. We have Rayana dos Santos versus Talita Alencar. I'm going to pick Rayane dos Santos to get the win over Talita Alencar. If you remember, Alencar wasn't even signed after her draw on the Contender Series at the actual event. I guess she got signed later. Kind of made her feel the pain in the moment of the girl she drawed with getting signed, Stephanie Luciano. I feel like Dos Santos in this fight here is definitely the more well-rounded fighter. She has way more MMA experience. Alencar is a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner. She has awesome jiu-jitsu. And we saw in the early phases of that fight on the Contender Series, she's dominant on the ground. And she took that on short notice nonetheless. But I think that Dos Santos is also good on the ground and clearly the better striker on the feet. And that's a big factor. I think Dos Santos is going to end up touching up Alencar striking. I could see this fight going to the ground, but Dos Santos is not going to be easy to hold down and dominate positions on because she's a good grappler in her own right too. I think Dos Santos, you look at the loss on Contender Series to Denise Gomes, that's aged very well because it was a good fight. She's the Invicta FC atomweight champion. Obviously, UFC doesn't have atomweight, so she's coming up to 115 pounds for this UFC debut. But Talita Alencar is not a big girl. She's 5'1" with a 58.5-inch reach. We have a height and reach advantage for Dos Santos, 5'2", 62-inch reach. Dos Santos should get the win. I'm going to say decision win for Dos Santos. She's the better striker. She's the more experienced MMA fighter, and she has good grappling too that will aid in the defenses needed to stop somebody on the ground like Alencar, who's a good grappler. Odds have Rayane minus 150, Alencar plus 130. Yeah, I think Dos Santos gets the win. We have Rayana Amanda. So if you're at your bookies and you're wondering where Dos Santos is at, maybe she's got it under Amanda as the last name. I think minus 150 makes a lot of sense for her to win here. And I'm curious at this over, just looking, minus 180, over 2.5. They got a good chance to go longer. I think the grappling will cancel one another out. But if Dos Santos is getting the striking going and Alencar is slowing down, I could see a TKO also. We're going with Dos Santos. Way more MMA fights. The younger girl, too. I think she gets the win. I'm going with the former atomweight champion Invicta FC. And Alencar, even though, she's a straw weight, she's not bigger than Dos Santos by any means. She's on the smaller side for the division for sure. Next fight on the card, Stephanie Egger versus Luana Santos. I'm going to pick Stephanie Egger to win because I'm not sold on Luana Santos at just 23 years of age. Even though she got a TKO striking of Juliana Miller, I thought that when you look at the actual striking technique, it was kind of abysmal here. And she's fighting Stephanie Egger, who I feel like is a good sized girl at 135, right? If you look at the last fight for Santos, she was fighting down at 125 pounds. Egger's going to have the size advantage, I believe, here. But besides that, Egger has a judo base. So now Santos grappling, which she shines in, is going to be difficult to really impose on Egger, who's a good grappler too, has strong hips. You look at a recent win for Egger. This is a big one. It was her, UFC victory over Eileen Perez. Perez is doing pretty good right now, and this win has actually aged very well. She got caught in a knee bar versus Alexieva last time. It's kind of just a weird submission and a weird fight overall. I don't think we got to judge her just off that matchup. And then before that, lost to Bueno Silva, who's challenging for the belt now. So Stephanie Egger's level in all actuality is kind of murky because she has a good win in the UFC. She has a bad loss to Alexieva, but it was a knee bar. It's kind of fluky. Luana Santos, I definitely think is going to look to engage in grappling. Don't be surprised if Santos is not successful in attempting takedowns. In her willingness to potentially pull guard, I don't think that she'll be able to submit a Stephanie Egger off of her back either. I'm going to pick Stephanie Egger to win a decision. I got to go with the experience, and I know she's 35. I recognize that. I'm just not sold on the 6-1 Santos right now, who's only 23. Odds for the fight, Egger is a plus 165 dog. Luana Santos at minus 190, the favorite. I'm curious to see how this pick ages specifically. I don't know. I don't see Santos having the crazy slick jiu-jitsu to tap an Egger out. Even though she's got good grappling and control, I think she doesn't finish her. And I think Egger's going to have moments in the fight. She's got the judo base. She can strike too. She offers a submission threat and she's strong. I'm picking Stephanie Egger for the win. Upset. I'm going with the 35-year-old here. Next fight on the card, we got Kenan Song versus Kevin Jousset. I'm picking Kevin Jousset to win. The word on the street is that he gives Israel Adesanya good work in sparring. And looking at his UFC debut, when he went out there and, destroyed Kiefer Crosby, his stand-up looks pretty solid. Now, Kenan Song is slept on, specifically by me a lot. He had back-to-back losses being to Max Griffin and Ian Gary. And then last time out, he ended up getting a win over, a prospect in Rolando Bedoya, who I think a lot of people were high on after he gave Chaos Williams a hellish fight. Kenan Song showed that he's pretty technically sound. He's a solid fighter. But I think Jousset's kickboxing is better. Jousset is long too, 75-inch reach to 71.5, 2-inch height advantage for Jousset as well. I could see him catching Kenan Song with hooks. I could see Kenan Song looking to close the gap, throwing big power, and definitely landing some strikes, but getting countered too. I think Song's going to get cracked here, man. I think he's getting knocked out. I'm going Kevin Jousset KO. I think he can get like a highlight reel knockout for himself. Maybe a lead hook, maybe a straight down the line. Kenan Song, he's got a powerful punch for sure, and he's got like overall good kickboxing, but I just got to favor Jousset in this fight here. I know Song's been in the UFC forever, and I would say he's a decent gatekeeper. He fought Israel Adesanya years ago. Jousset kind of has an Israel Adesanya-esque style, though. You can see that they train together in the way that he moves. Jousset is going to be a minus 155 favorite. That's not wide at all. Plus 135 for Kenan Song. I'm going with the prospect. This is a crossroads fight in all actuality. It's Jousset who's looking to surge up and become a potential, UFC contender. And then we got Kenan Song on the opposite side who's looking to hold on to, his UFC roster spot. I mean, it's not like he's getting cut after this loss, but I think Jousset's a pretty good prospect, and I'm going to pick the side of Jousset to end up getting a knockout over Kenan Song. Let's keep running up. Next fight on the card, we got Tatsuro Taira versus Carlos Hernandez. The thing with Tatsuro is his last fight against Edgar Chairez, it looked bad at the very end because he was caught in a guillotine choke and was mounted. And let's be honest, if there's 30 more seconds, he's probably getting submitted. Nonetheless, here against Carlos Hernandez, we know Tatsuro Taira is going to have the clear-cut jiu-jitsu advantage, and I think he's going to bring a pretty significant submission threat to Hernandez. You look at Hernandez's UFC loss, it was a submission loss recently, right? What was it, about 10 months ago? Not that long ago, a year ago. Allan Nascimento got him with the rear naked choke early in the fight. And then after that, technical decision over Denis Bondar. He looked decent in that fight. I feel like this is a matchup kind of catered towards the development of Tatsuro Taira. I'm going to say he can get a submission here, but Hernandez is a tough guy and he scrambles well. I don't think he goes out easily. It's just if Taira can get that back, the rear naked choke is live. I could see a decision or a submission for Tatsuro Taira. Carlos Hernandez is a scrappy dog, though, and like, I'm not sold on Taira striking at all. I think he actually gets outstruck by Hernandez. He needs this fight on the ground, and I do think he's going to excel at landing takedowns here, but they're not going to be easy to get. Tatsuro Taira is a favorite at minus 450 here. Carlos Hernandez, a plus 350 underdog. I'm picking Taira to win. I wish the odds were closer, but the prospect is definitely, looking to be groomed here. The UFC is taking their time with Tatsuro Taira. Made his debut a year and 6 months ago. Win over Carlos Candelario by decision. Submitted CJ Vergara. Submitted Jesus Aguilar. And then beat Edgar Chairez on a competitive decision. And that was the toughest fight for sure of his UFC career. I think that this matchup here, there might be a more clear path to victory by submission with Hernandez, who I don't think has as good of a jiu-jitsu game or is as like freakishly tough as Edgar Chairez. So I'm going to say Taira's live for the sub, but decision isn't crazy because we've seen Taira outposition guys and win decisions controlling on the mat, and we could definitely get that here. But because of the submission loss 2 fights ago for Carlos Hernandez, there is a possibility that Taira gets that back and locks up a sub, man. So I'm going to go Taira to get a submission in this fight. He should definitely win. Still a developing guy, though, man. And he's 23, he's young. The UFC is looking to build the Japanese market with Taira because they're not rushing him up the ranks by any means. Featured prelim of the night, it's Hyun Sung Park versus Shannon Ross. I thought Shannon Ross was going to get released from the UFC after a terrible one-punch knockout loss to Jesus Aguilar last time. Before that, he got brutally knocked out by Clayton Rodriguez. And before that, he was knocked out on Contender Series by Vincia Salvador. So he's a Contender Series loser that got a shot to come into the UFC, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak now, and 1-4 in his last 5. But when you look at all of his losses, Steve Erceg beat him. All of his recent losses are against guys that are in the UFC. So not like a terrible loss. But Hyun Sung Park, he's pretty good, man. I think he's definitely going to win. Like, come on. If it doesn't go the way of Park, then the road to the UFC has become a complete bust because Anshu Jubli lost. And now if Park loses, not going to be a good look. Nonetheless, I think that Hyun Sung Park has a clear-cut grappling advantage, and he's going to be more dangerous in the striking. I feel like Park is live for a rear naked choke, but more or less, it's going to be dependent upon if Shannon Ross's chin is completely gone or not. Like, if the chin is now the glass slipper, one punch and Park could knock him out and it's done. But if Shannon Ross could eat a couple strikes, then I can see Park employing some grappling and getting that rear naked choke. I'm definitely thinking Park inside of the distance. I'll call submission officially, but because Ross is coming off back-to-back-to-back knockout losses, it's hard to overlook the fact that he might get KO'd. Last fight, submission win, rear naked choke for Park over Sunguk Choi. Submission, rear naked choke before that against Kyu Ram on the road to the UFC. Before that, he did get a KO, though, of Seregar on the, road to the UFC. So a knockout's possible. I think inside of the distance makes a lot of sense. Under 2.5 rounds for sure. Odds for the fight, we have Park at minus 500. Yeah, he's a really wide favorite. Opened up at minus 300. Minus 500 makes sense, guys. Shannon Ross is being thrown to the wolves. Unfortunately, he's just going to be 0-4 under the Zuffa banner and get released from the UFC. I think he made it to the UFC a little late. He's a tough guy, and he's a decent striker. It's just, I think his best days are behind him, man. And Park is on the come up right now. And he's a prospect the UFC is investing in. Under 1.5, minus 170. It's probably going under 1.5. It's probably going 5 minutes or less. I'm thinking Park, first round submission I'll call, but first round knockout makes a lot of sense too. He's going to get the win here, guys. This is a 1-round fight. Park is going to destroy Shannon Ross. Not competitive in the slightest. Next fight on the card is our main card opener. we got Nasrat Haqparast versus Jamie Mullarkey. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. I'm going to pick Jamie Mullarkey to win this fight. I don't know why Nasrat Haqparast continues to have hype on him. I'm always underwhelmed by his performances. Now, I know Jamie Mullarkey got knocked out by Muhammad Naimov 2 fights ago. He had a really close fight with John Makdessi, but it's not like Nasrat Haqparast blew John Makdessi out of the water in their fight either. Mullarkey is long and tall, good kickboxing style. Haqparast is not that heavy-handed. He throws decent overhands, but it's not like they're super accurate. He's a southpaw. Nonetheless, I'm picking Mullarkey in a fight that I see as a coin flip. I just think Mullarkey's going to have tricky kicks. He's got that upright kickboxing style. He's tight. He throws hard shots. His head movement's improved. He doesn't have a significant power threat with Haqparast on the other side. Somewhere Haqparast could exploit Mullarkey would be with the takedowns. I think this fight is going the distance, no matter which side you're on. I see a decision here. I just have a feeling Jamie Mullarkey is going to make this a scrap and end up pulling off an upset win. I have to ride with my gut in this fight here. Initially, watching any film, I was like, all right, Haqparast should definitely beat Mullarkey. But when I'm looking at his fight against Landon Quinones, I'm like, dude, he didn't look that great. When I watched the fight against John Makdessi, dude, he didn't look that great. And obviously, I remember his fight against Bobby Green and Dan Hooker. He's a tough customer. And Haqparast is mostly losing once the level gets shifted upward, right? But he's dealing with a guy that has a tricky frame and honestly is in a similar career position as him, besides the fact Jamie Mullarkey got chinned in one punch by Muhammad Naimov in a fight he was winning. But let's be honest, I think Naimov might have more power than Nasrat Haqparast. I'm going to pick Mullarkey, man. I'm going for him, man. I think that Mullarkey can get a competitive win. I'm not doubting Mullarkey because you pick against him, you lose, you pick him, maybe you lose too, but I don't know. I got a feeling Mullarkey for the upset win. Both guys too, pretty young, 29 Mullarkey, 28 Haqparast in their primes right now. Yeah, I'm going to go Mullarkey in the coin flip. This could be one of my weirder picks of the night, but I just had a feeling Mullarkey's going to get him, and I got to just ride with my call. Plus 185 for Jamie Mullarkey, minus 220 for Nasrat Haqparast, and over 2.5 is minus 240. That makes a lot of sense. I think Mullarkey is going to win a competitive and close decision here over Nasrat Haqparast to start off the main card. Let's go for the underdog. Let's give it a whirl. Coin flip fight, I think Mullarkey might get him. Next fight on the card, we got André Muniz versus Jun Young Park. I'm going to pick Jun Young Park to win. Muniz has really slick submissions, but Jun Young Park is pretty sound on the ground. And he also is clearly the better striker. I always feel like Muniz kind of looks like he's in mud when he's striking, meaning that his feet are very slow. And he kind of seems like he's underwater at times, throwing looping punches that just don't have a lot of speed on them. And Park is clearly the slicker striker here. Now, he gives up 3 inches in height and he gives up 5 inches in reach to Muniz, but Muniz doesn't do a great job of using his reach in the stand-up, and he's not a very good wrestler. Park is definitely the better wrestler. So I think Park is going to be punching Muniz pretty consistently on the feet. I think Muniz is going to end up getting rocked in this fight and knocked out. I could see a tired Muniz even getting submitted by Jun Young Park. But I'm going to pick the side of Park to get the win. I think the Iron Turtle can do it. He's one of the more underrated guys on the roster. Jun Young Park, he's been around forever, man. I think Muniz is going to potentially jump guard and try to fight off of his back and throw up a submission. I just think it's going to be hard to find. I think Park's too good on the ground to get tapped, and I think his boxing is clearly better, and the wrestling will stop Muniz's jiu-jitsu takedowns. So I'm going Park for the win, and I think he gets a knockout. But submission isn't crazy. I'm curious what that prop's going to look like when it officially drops. Minus 200 for Park. Muniz plus 170 as the underdog here. Fight's expected to go under 1.5, minus 110, over 1.5, minus 120. So coin flip for that. I like an under 2.5 more than a 1.5 because, I could see a patient Park slowly and methodically, picking apart André Muniz. Yeah, I think Park is going to give Muniz fits on the feet, and he's going to get a W. I'm going to say Park hurts him, and then might get ground and pound stoppage. Muniz fatigues after the second round or even in the second round, and Park's getting it done. I'm going with the Iron Turtle to beat the submission ace, André Muniz, who honestly his hype train has crashed. The Paul Craig loss, and then before that, the Brendan Allen loss. The Allen loss wasn't bad. The Paul Craig loss is aged kind of bad because of how bad Allen beat the shit out of him. I'm going to say Park for a stoppage win. He's getting it done. Next fight on the card is our featured bout of the night. It's Sumudaerji versus Allan Nascimento. I'm going to pick Nascimento to win. I actually think this is a good fight for him. They're giving him a favorable matchup in Sumudaerji because if you really think about Su's style, he's a really good striker. He's long from the outside, but he's suspect on the ground. He has 5 losses by submission. He got submitted in his last fight by Matt Schnell. I feel like Nascimento, being a shoot the box Diego Lima guy, is kind of silently getting a little bit of a streak going at flyweight. He's an under-the-radar guy. His only loss in the UFC is to Tagir Ulanbekov in a competitive split decision, where Ulanbekov really didn't do much from top position in that fight. It was just the jiu-jitsu versus the wrestling, and not a lot happened. Nascimento against somebody that's primarily a striker in Sumudaerji, I think is going to absolutely shine in this fight. I'm saying we're getting a win by submission by Nascimento. I think he probably takes the back. He's got good back takes, and he grabs a rear naked choke. Beat Carlos Hernandez by rear naked choke last time. Decision win over Jake Hadley, but I think here he can actually get the finish. And if he doesn't end up submitting a Sumudaerji, it's going to be a dominant grappling display. I don't think Nascimento's striking is bad either. He's kind of athletic on the feet with like an upright Muay Thai style. And I think that his stand-up game being decent enough really aids him into getting grappling control in this fight. So I'm going Nascimento by sub. Nascimento's a big favorite at minus 289, and Mudaerji is a plus 249 underdog. I'm going Nascimento for the W. His stand-up should hold up against Mudaerji. I like Mudaerji's kicks, though, and his punches are good from range. He's a southpaw. He's got a nasty left hand. He's fast on the feet. If I'm Nascimento, don't kickbox with him all night, but use a little bit of striking to find takedowns, and I think we'll have great success for Nascimento. Submission win, Allan Nascimento in this fight. He's representing shoot the box Diego Lima well here at the flyweight class. Co-main event of the evening, we got Anthony Smith versus Khalil Rountree Jr. This fight is a short notice bout. Rountree was initially supposed to fight last week against Azamat Murzakanov. That fight ended up getting canceled with Murzakanov getting pneumonia, actually. And we have a rebooking a week later against Anthony Smith, taking the fight on short notice. And I'm going to pick Anthony Smith. Initially, my early prediction, if you guys were watching my live streams last week, where I'm like, oh, I think Rountree knocks him out. But then I went back and I watched Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann, and I watched it from the eye of already knowing the result. And I'm like, man, his stand-up looked pretty decent in that fight. He was still catching Spann with some shots, and he was threatened with submissions early. If you look at Anthony Smith, by no means is he chinny. He's not an easy guy to knock out, specifically at 205. His only knockout losses at 205 in the UFC are from ground and pound. And Khalil Rountree is a primary striker, a Muay Thai style striker who has big punching power and definitely heavy kicks. Anthony Smith is good from the outside. He has a grappling threat that he brings to this fight. And even though Rountree is on a great streak right now, 4 wins in a row. Modestas Bukauskas, he destroyed his knee with the oblique kick. Carl Roberson, he knocked out, who was a good kickboxer. Dustin Jacoby, he won a controversial split decision over. And he knocked out Chris Daukaus with 1 shot. Anthony Smith is the highest level guy as of recent that he's fought. Smith is like the top caliber gatekeeper. He's top 9. Ranked number 9 on Tapology. He's in the mix as far as the upper echelon of guys. And if you look at recent losses for Anthony Smith, Magomed Ankalaev, that's really not a bad loss. Johnny Walker out kickboxed him, and Smith didn't really do a whole lot in that fight, but it's also Johnny Walker has a freakish frame and is surging right now, and I'm excited for that Ankalaev rebooking. And let's be honest here, let's not forget, Khalil Rountree, looking back 5 fights, Marcin Prachnio did outstrike him. I'm not saying he hasn't gotten better, he has, but if Anthony Smith can avoid the dynamite punch, kickbox with him a bit on the feet, but then engage in grappling, we've seen Khalil Rountree controlled on the ground, and Khalil does have 2 rear naked choke losses, one of them being against Corey Hendricks on the Ultimate Fighter years ago. But Anthony Smith by submission is just making a ton of sense to me. I think he's more accurate too than Khalil Rountree, though he's significantly less powerful. If he gets this fight to the ground, I think he really can thrive here. I'm not on the side of, hey, Anthony Smith's got nothing left. I think that he's taking this fight on short notice because he feels he still is in the mix. And Rountree, I think, in Smith's mind, is a winnable matchup. You dig back on Khalil, guys engaging him in the grappling have had success in the past, and I think Smith can go to that here. I think he could out-wrestle Rountree, and I think he's going to submit him. I'm going Anthony Smith by sub on short notice. I'm not doubting the short notice guy in Anthony Smith. We saw it with Jalen Turner last week. I doubted him coming in on short notice, and he shined. I think Smith can win here. Plus 190 for Smith. Minus 225 for Rountree. Under 1.5 is predicted. At minus 153 favorite status. Plus 123 for the over. I think we're probably going under 1.5. Under 2.5 for sure. And I'm seeing Anthony Smith lock in a rear naked choke. But maybe we go longer. Maybe we go over that 1.5. It's technical striking early. Smith slowly wears on Khalil Rountree and then gets him to the ground in the second round, takes his back and strangles him. I'm going Anthony Smith with the rear naked choke. Anthony Smith by submission in this fight. I think he's getting the upset win, and I think he's holding his spot in that top 10 over heavy-handed Khalil Rountree. Next fight brings us to our main event of the evening. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We got Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. And my prediction surprised me. I'm going to pick Chris Gutierrez to get a decision. I, pre-study, was like, oh, Song Yadong's going to knock him out. He's going to close the gap and rip him with heavy punches. But when I went back and watched Song Yadong versus Kyler Phillips, I was starting to think back on Song's career. I'm like, okay, fast guys that have good leg kicks from the outside that aren't easy to hit with punches and have solid chins. Like Chris Gutierrez, like, yeah, you can say, oh, he got rocked by Pedro Munoz. Doesn't mean Song Yadong is going to land with that precision and power. Song's coming off of a nice win over Ricky Simone, and he gave a gutsy effort in a dominant loss to Corey Sandhagen. But that shouldn't equal a guaranteed W against Chris Gutierrez, who just a couple fights ago, I think people thought was a future title challenger. You look at the recent fights, Gutierrez, clean performance and a win over the short notice Elatong Haley. Elatong was the short notice replacement in that fight where Gutierrez was preparing for Montel Jackson, a completely different style. And now he's specifically preparing for Song Yadong. I think that the kickboxing is going to be on display. Before that, Pedro Munoz did cleanly beat him. But at the end of the fight, it's not like Chris Gutierrez wasn't coming on strong. And if they went 5 rounds, who's to know what was going to happen here? It's not like Gutierrez got destroyed. He clearly lost, though. Frankie Edgar knockout, which had the hype booming for Gutierrez. Then it got Batgarel knockout. And then before that, rest in peace, Philippe Kalarish win for Chris Gutierrez. Song Yadong is a striker. Even though he trains at Team Alpha Male, his boxing is really what gets him the wins. And I'm concerned about his leg. I feel like he's a little heavy on the lead leg, and he plants hard to sit down on his power strikes. And Gutierrez getting on those leg kicks early with mastery of striking, because Chris Gutierrez is a masterful kickboxer who moves extraordinarily well. I think he's suited for 5 rounds, a patient onslaught. I think Song Yadong is going to look to press the action on Gutierrez. Gutierrez is going to rip with kicks and counter strike here. It's not that Song Yadong won't have any moments in this fight. And there is a possibility that Song lands an explosive hook, and I think he could drop Chris Gutierrez, but I don't think he's going to put him away. I think Chris Gutierrez is going to take this fight over the 5 rounds by a decision. I'm looking at the fight straight down the line. I'm not being swayed by the odds here. Gutierrez is a big underdog, but I don't think Song Yadong and him is any more than a real 50-50 type of fight. I could see Song Yadong as a minus 150 favorite. That makes way more sense to me. Instead, Song Yadong is minus 360 as the favorite in this fight, where Chris Gutierrez is a plus 285 underdog. That doesn't make sense. That's shocking to me. I think Chris Gutierrez is a great underdog. Plus 285, I think he wins this fight. Decision win, Gutierrez. Over 3.5, minus 185. I'm anticipating it going longer, and it's interesting that the minus 185 tag is minus 185, because if the fight is to go the distance, I'd assume it's Gutierrez winning a decision. If Song's to win, wouldn't he be catching Chris Gutierrez with a big power strike and potentially knocking him out? This isn't the Ricky Simone fight, a short, stocky wrestler who'll throw hard punches and look to engage takedowns. This is a long kickboxer. Granted, it's not like Gutierrez has a crazy reach advantage here. He's 5'9" to Song 5'8", 67-inch reach to 67, but Gutierrez uses range better than Song Yadong, and he's great with his kicks. The leg kicks are going to be on display. The striking from the outside on display. Song Yadong is going to look to get inside and throw power strikes. I think Gutierrez evades a lot of those power strikes well. And Song does not have this elite wrestling game to go to really threaten Gutierrez in that spot. I don't see it. I think Chris Gutierrez is getting a win. I'm going upset in the main event. The odds to me are ludicrous for this fight. I'm going Chris Gutierrez by decision to upset Song Yadong, and I think he's back in the mix here at 135 pounds after beating Song, who somehow is only 26 still. It makes no sense to me. I feel like Song Yadong has been 26 for the past 10 years. Like, he's been in the UFC such a long time, and he's been fighting forever, and he's 26. That's mind-boggling to me. I'm picking Chris Gutierrez to win, guys. I think he can get it done. Song's a good fighter. He hits really hard, but Gutierrez to me is technically superior, and the striking skill set / counter striking abilities, leg kicks specifically, are going to be on display. Chris Gutierrez by decision in the main event of the evening. That is UFC Vegas 83. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. I honestly had a lot of fun breaking this card down. I got a week's worth of content every single day, so make sure you guys are subscribed if you haven't yet. And if you haven't turned the post notifications on, do turn them on. And don't just leave them on personalized. Put them on all so you don't miss a video. Smash the like button here. Share the video too if you really enjoyed it. I appreciate you all tuning in. I'm looking forward to the Fight Companion on Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun. UFC bringing the heat in December with a good card at the Apex. This was initially supposed to be in Shanghai, but they ended up changing it to the UFC Apex. No specific details on why given out by Dana White, but he was asked that question last night. I guess it's something going on in Asia or China, specifically in Shanghai. I don't know exactly why. I'm curious. I'd want to know, but it's at the Apex now. Honestly, it's better because the card was going to be at like 3 in the morning Eastern time. So better for my sleep schedule because I would have been live for the whole thing either way. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the picks. And if you have nothing to say in the comments, we just enjoy the content as always, drop a W in the chat to boost the algorithm for your boy. Much love, my people, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace, guys.